Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Now, when I was growing up, I was always the kid who was questioning what was considered accepted truths. I think it goes all the way back to my schooling when I realized from a very early age that a lot of my teachers had no idea what they were talking about, and a lot of them were huffing paint in the supply closet rooms. And that's basically when I started becoming a devil's advocate for almost everything. I remember watching the prequel trilogies growing up, and the first thing I thought to myself was, wow, the Jedi are really messed up. And as I got older and started reading about how the Jedi Order worked, I realized we shouldn't just listen to Lucas when he says that the Jedi are good guys and the Sith are bad guys, because I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd much rather have Obi-Wan Kenobi as my neighbor rather than that psycho who doesn't like sand, but I think it's about time someone looks at the Jedi Order and examine the fundamental problems that are built into this organization. The Jedi Order have a very corporate-sounding division known as the Acquisition Department. In a normal company, this department essentially gathers assets and resources for their organization. In the Jedi Order's case, those resources are babies, Force-sensitive babies. And this job is carried out by some of the most hated members of the Jedi Order, the Jedi Recruiters. These are Jedis who have a natural ability or are trained to track other Force sensitives. I almost feel bad for these guys because, behind their backs, everyone is calling them baby snatchers, because that's what they do. Now, we're not sure about the Jedi Order's official policy on recruitment because they're kind of shady like that, but from what we can tell, the Jedi Order considers it a security issue. If a powerful Force baby goes untrained, it's very possible that it will fall to the dark side without the protection of the Jedi Order. Oh wait. After prospective Force-sensitive babies were taken from their parents, they were never allowed to see them again. Because parents aren't a birthright, they're attachments, and attachments lead to the dark side. This is why Anakin had to go rogue when he went to save his mom. And in all fairness though, seeing his mom chained to a dirty pole in a Tusken Raider tent did lead him to massacring an entire camp of women and children. So maybe the Jedi have a point there? I don't know. In the old days, the Jedi were open to recruitment of individuals at all ages. But after many generations, as the Order became more complicated and organized, an age limit was introduced. This meant for a lot of the Jedi, the only education and family they would ever know would be from the Jedi. And because of this isolation, they were pretty much forced to follow the Jedi way. This means individuals who are stuck in crappy jobs like the Agriculture Corps or the Acquisition Department were pretty much stuck in those roles. The alternative would be getting exiled and thrown into the street with no worldly possessions and very few marketable skills. As cool as telekinesis is, you really can't land a job with it that isn't illegal or in a circus. The reason why the Jedi didn't like older recruits was because they had life experiences, and in some cases they already had pretty developed worldviews, morals, and beliefs. It's much harder to mold someone when the clay has already been shaped and heated up. That's why it's good to brainwash individuals when they're young, when they're a blank slate. These same concepts were used by delightful organizations like the Nazis, or the Chinese Communist Party, and Hamas. The Jedi wanted complete control over their followers' beliefs, and their excuse was that without that protection, they could fall to the dark side. This environment encouraged groupthink and penalized individuals who thought independently. Ironically, it was masters like Qui-Gon Jinn who were more in touch with what it meant to be a Jedi that ultimately saved the Order. Ahsoka Tano was 14 years old when she took part in the Battle of Teth. Anakin Skywalker was 9 years old when he engaged in his first dogfight. According to international law, it is a war crime to recruit individuals that are under 15 years old to fight in a war. And there's even more new protocol that's being adopted by several countries that raises that age to 18 years old. And that's because of how war can affect an individual, especially children who aren't emotionally mature enough to understand what the hell is going on. Despite the fact that the Jedi Order is supposed to serve the Republic and is funded by the Republic, it has very little oversight. Especially before the Supreme Chancellor started flexing his executive power. That meant Jedi could get away with things like Grand Theft Auto causing mayhem and damage and even murder with very little consequences. And don't even get me started on forced persuasion. That is completely messed up. Any severe wrongdoings by Jedi were investigated internally, When Ahsoka Tano was accused of treason, the Republic wasn't able to touch her until she had been kicked out of the Jedi Order. On top of that, they completely lack transparency, so we have no idea how they spent their budget, where the money came from, what the structure of the Jedi Order is like, and what are the rules, which kind of made doing the research for this video very hard. Inside the Jedi Temple are several hundreds, if not thousands, of holocrons that have invaluable information hidden within them. The Jedi are self-proclaimed keepers and protectors of this information and have limited access to the public. This, once again, is alarming. The Jedi are supposed to serve the people, not dictate what they can read or what they can't read. We also learned that the Jedi had exclusive rights to mining and weaponizing kyber crystals. Later on, it was discovered by Galen Erso that these crystals had tremendous potential as a potent alternative fuel source. But during the Republic era, the Jedi selflessly guarded these kyber crystals and didn't allow anyone else to touch them. Obi-Wan Kenobi famously said,
"Only a Sith deals in absolutes."
And that's extremely hypocritical, because the Jedi Code as dictated by the Jedi Order is full of absolutes. One of these absolutes is their unconditional war of destruction against the Sith. The Jedi believe in law and order in most cases except when it dealt with the Sith. Anakin Skywalker doesn't kill Count Dooku in combat, he executes a disarmed combatant who had been separated from his weapon. There are several international laws which dictate how a surrendered combatant should be treated, and none of those laws say anything about cutting their heads off with lightsabers. And Mace Windu is almost successful doing the same thing later on. A long time ago, the ancient Jedi practiced balancing the Force within themselves. That meant individuals learned how to use both the dark and light side of the Force. And it worked pretty well, until they were involved in a terrible war. After the war, many Jedi began using their dark side powers more. There was a civil war, and eventually the dark side Force users were defeated. The individuals that stayed true to balance would go on to discard the dark side completely and turn into the Jedi. Centuries later, a few Jedi were exiled after they began dabbling with the dark side, and they became the Sith. The problem with the Jedi Order is that it became a very extreme organization, so that when members encountered the dark side, they were completely unprepared and quickly succumbed to its temptations. The ancient Jedi were balanced in their teaching and were able to resist temptation better because they understood in which forms the dark side could manifest itself. And if someone started leaning too heavily to the dark side, they would go ahead and try to rehabilitate them. The same thing goes for individuals who use the light side too much. This was a much better policy than the one the modern Jedi Order employed. They treated the dark side as the ultimate taboo and an unforgivable offense. The clone troopers were very much sentient beings, yet they were born into servitude. Clones that refused to fight or went AWOL were hunted down and destroyed. They were essentially a slave army, bred to serve, and the Jedi were the ones who led them into battle, and they turned a blind eye. It was even reported by several Jedi that the clones feel like individuals in the Force, yet the Jedi still did nothing about this. It just shows us how lost the Jedi Order truly was. The Jedi claimed time and time again that they were fighting for the preservation of democracy.
My allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
Yet their own order was the opposite of democracy. The Jedi Order claims that fear leads to the dark side, yet it is fear of the dark side which makes them rip babies from their parents, brainwash kids, and prevent their followers from falling in love. It's that same fear that makes them kill dark side users on sight, and withhold valuable technology and resources from the public. Now again, I'm not saying that the Jedi are an evil organization, but they are fundamentally an extremist organization. And the problem with extremism is that they aren't inclusive and create conflict. And in the end, they're the ones who have unbalanced the Force. This video has been brought to you by the Imperial Task Force on Extremism and Religious Fundamentalism. Well guys, that's all we have for you today. Please let us know in the comments below what you think about our list. Do you think we're right? Has this given you a new perspective on the Jedi Order, or do you think we're wrong and the Jedi are great? If you think that, please do comment below and include your Imperial ID number. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on all of our latest and greatest content. And a special thanks to all you Patreon supporters out there. If one of you guys ever told me that you were a Sith Lord, I wouldn't kill you. I'd give you a hug. Unless you looked like Palpatine. Well, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.